Hi friend, if you're trying to slow things down a bit and make more stuff from scratch, you're not alone. Lately, I've been leaning into more simple routines that make our week feel more grounded, and baking fresh homemade bread is one of them. Today, I'm making two kinds of sourdough, a rustic artisan loaf that'll be perfect for soups and toast, plus soft hamburger buns that'll be great for lunches, sliders, you name it. It's not about perfection, just real food made with love that helps me feel a little more prepared for our week ahead. So if you're craving that rhythm too, I would love for you to bake along with me, and let's get started. First up, we're gonna make our artisan loaf, and make sure you have your kitchen scale. It's so much easier to make sourdough bread when you're going off of grams versus cups, because it can the cup, if you accidentally pack your flour too much, you can have too much flour. So it's just a lot easier. And kitchen scales, this one I think was only like 15 bucks. I'll link it below, got it on Amazon, use it all the time. So if you are thinking about doing sourdough, I will link a bunch of the stuff that I use below. And I love this jar too for the starter. I keep it in the fridge throughout the week, and then when I want to feed it to make dough, pull it out, feed it, it's ready to go. And it's just so nice and big versus trying to get like a plastic container or a mason jar. This is really nice. My husband actually got me this for Christmas, along with a razor set and a couple other things. So we want to set our bowl on the scale and then zero it out. So it says 0 grams. And we need 100 grams of our starter. So you want this to be active and bubbly. I don't test mine anymore because I've had it for a year now. So I just know that it's nice and active. If you are just getting started with feeding your starter and it's only like 30 days old, I know in the beginning, a couple years ago, when I started my starter, it just wasn't as old. So I had to verify that it was active by doing the water float test. And that's basically you just take a dollop, throw it in a glass of water, and if it floats, it's active, it's ready to go. So we need to measure 100 grams of our starter. And I haven't quite decided yet what type of artisan loaf. I mean, I'm gonna make an artisan loaf. I don't know if I wanna do like a cheddar jalapeno or a garlic herb. So I'm still debating. We're not at that step yet, so I still have a little bit of time. Okay. And then we want 360 grams of warm water. And if you get a little extra water in there than the 360 grams, don't worry about it. Just take a spoon or a tablespoon or whatever, get a little bit out. And so not even a whole tablespoon of water that I took out, and I'm just gonna pour it in the sink. There are a lot of different recipes for how to make this sourdough loaf. This is one that over the last year I've been going through lots of different recipes online, and I kind of made my own variation of a wheat and all-purpose flour mixture. So I really like the flavor that wheat adds to it, but I don't want a whole dense wheat bread. So I do 50 grams of wheat flour and then 450 grams of bread flour. And I will link in the description the recipes to both these and the hamburger buns, so you can reference them later and you don't have to write them all down right now. And then last but not least, we need 10 grams of salt. And then we'll just stir this with our fork and make sure you take it off of your scale, because you don't want to mess up your scale from the weight of the bowl and pressing down to stir. Stir it all together. And at first it's going to look shaggy like this. It's not in a nice perfect ball. That's totally fine. This is actually what you want it to look like. And I'm gonna let this sit for 30 minutes. Just that extra time gives the water and the flour time to really soak, get nice and connected together. And then we will start our stretch and folds. And I'm just gonna let this set here on my counter. We're not at the stage where we need it to rise, so I'm not putting it in the oven yet. But I am gonna cover it so it doesn't get dried out while we wait 30 minutes for it to sit and meld together. Okay, so we're gonna start our stretch and folds. And one tip to make sure that your dough doesn't stick to your fingers is to get your hands wet. So just run them under water, and then we stretch the dough up and do it on all sides. And there we go. And then we'll let this set for another 10 minutes. We'll do another stretch and fold, Yeah, and we'll do this about 6 times. Okay, so in between our stretch and folds for the Artisan loaf, we are going to get our hamburger bun recipe made and put together. So this needs a lot of the same ingredients. We've got our starter, flour. We are gonna add honey to this for a little bit of sweetener, salt, and butter. And this time I am going to use my mixer instead of doing the stretch and folds. So that's why I brought my mixer over here. And I'm also just going to measure everything in our mixing bowl. And I did not refeed my starter since we mixed our Artisan loaf bread, and it's already, when I poured it out for the Artisan loaf, it's already grown another like 1/2 inch. So it is nice and bubbly. So you shouldn't need, if you're doing it all within the same like time period of making bread, you shouldn't need to re-add more. You should just be able to use what's in here. Okay, and since this is all the sourdough we are making today, I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid back on this and then put it in my fridge. I like to keep it in the fridge. You don't have to keep it on your countertop. I honestly would recommend not doing that because most likely you're not gonna be making bread every single day. So it's way easier to keep it in the fridge, and then once you need it, you just feed it, give it 5 to 6 hours to get nice and active, and then you can use it. Or even sometimes I will feed it the night before, and then the next morning, I'll get up early before kids and everything to put the dough together, mix the dough. Usually takes 5-10 minutes to mix everything together, and then let that set and rise all day, and then bake the bread at night. Because if you currently feel like you have a lot of sourdough waste or a lot of discard because you're feeding it every single day, you do not have to do that if you store it in the fridge. And I have kept mine in the fridge for probably a month or 2 before feeding it again, and it will get just like some black hooch is what they call it. I don't know exactly what it is. It's not black mold. All you have to do is scrape that off. I always just scrape it into the sink, take the layer so it's not there, rinse it down the sink, and then I feed it and it grows again. So it's totally fine. That is just, I think it's just where it's saying, I want to be fed, I need to be fed so I can grow and not have this stuff on here. So don't worry if your starter separates or it has that black stuff on there. Just pour that out, feed it, and it'll be fine. Okay, and then again, we need warm water. And we need 177 grams of the warm water this time. And the stretch and folds, they don't need to be intimidating. I know they can seem that way because it's not something we're typically used to, and I know in the beginning when I started doing sourdough, I like set a timer and made sure every 10 minutes so this is going too slow. But anyways, I set a timer and made sure I was doing a stretch and fold every 10 minutes and on the dot, and it doesn't need to be that stressful. You can do stretch and folds every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just so long that you do 6 to 7 of them. It doesn't need to be anything that you're stressing about. Just when you come into the room, oh, let's do a stretch and fold. You leave to go do something, change the laundry, whatever, you come back, oh, let's do another stretch and fold. So just try not to make it too stressful because then you probably won't stick with it. At least I know that's how I would be. Okay, so our hamburger bun dough is done, and we will be adding it to our bowl, and I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of oil in there so it doesn't stick, and then we will let it rise for 8 to 10 hours. And I will say mine was looking it was still pretty sticky, so I did add probably 2 to 3 tablespoons of flour as it was mixing. So that just kind of comes with, if after 5 to 6 minutes of it mixing together, it's still sticking a lot to the bowl, add a little bit of flour, see if that helps it come away once it's spinning. If it does, great. If not, give it a minute or 2, add a little more flour, and then it should come away from the bowl really well. So just don't add like a cup of flour. Do just like little shakes at a time. And I'm also going to preheat my oven we're not baking anything, but you do want the dough to rise in a warm environment. So I usually let my oven be on preheat for 2 to 3 minutes until it's around like 120 degrees. Then I shut it off and I will just add the dough in there and just let it set in there for 8 to 10 hours. I had earlier this year, I was trying to make sourdough cinnamon rolls, and that's the same for yeast too. Like if you're using yeast instead of sourdough, it needs a warm environment. So, but back to my story, I was making cinnamon rolls and literally the dough looked a lot similar to this hamburger bun dough. Put it in the oven. I didn't preheat it. I just kind of was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll leave it in there for 10 hours because I was going to bed. It was night. And so I was just going to do it in the morning. And then I take it out in the morning and it was still doughy and it hadn't risen at all. And so I definitely should have added a little bit of heat to the oven just to kickstart the growing process. So make sure you do that. Although if you forget, it happens. So don't like kick yourself for it. Okay, so we are going to do one more stretch and fold on our dough, and then we can also put this one in the oven to rise. And it's kind of amazing how like we didn't mix this besides just with a fork, but it is all one nice smooth ball of dough now. It's pretty cool how that works. And just a little tip so you don't forget that your bread is in the oven and you accidentally start it to preheat something for dinner and then you bake your bread on accident. So I like to write myself just a little sticky note, bread oven, so that way I don't turn it on when my bread is rising. Because I did that before with my sourdough starter this last winter. I put it in the oven because it was warmer versus when it's like really cold out. And I accidentally started preheating my oven and then I cooked my sourdough starter. And it was in a plastic container, so it all just melted. Just tip, leave a note, just in case. So before I head to bed, it's now around 9:30. Our dough has been rising in the oven for 8 to 9 hours at this point. So gonna take both of these out, and our hamburger bun dough is looking really good. So we're just gonna transfer that straight into the fridge. I don't need to do anything with it tonight, but we're gonna put it in the fridge for the overnight fermentation process. So for our artisan loaf bread, we are doing an onion garlic herb bread. And the reason I do this is it adds lots of good flavor. It's easy to do, don't have to shred up any cheese, but I just love adding all the different seasonings into the bread because it just makes it taste so much better. So, and I didn't measure any of this. I'm just spreading it over my dough after you put it on a flat surface. Make sure you flour it so that it doesn't stick. But I did onion powder, garlic powder, thyme, chives, parsley, and dill. Always love adding dill. Dill is so good. I'm a huge fan of dill. So just sprinkle a bunch of that over your dough, and then we are gonna roll it up, kind of like hot dog bun style, and then we'll scrunch in the edges, and we will call it good, and we'll throw it in our floured banneton, cover it up, and then let it ferment overnight. And the fermentation process for sourdough is where all of the really good benefits come from that you hear about a lot for your gut microbiome. And then also with the artisan loaf bread that we're doing, when you add the flavors in and you shape it, and having it sit and ferment overnight is really getting all of those flavors melded together, and it just enhances whatever flavors you're putting in the bread. So you can do anywhere from 6 to 24 hours of having it sit in the fridge, and I really like doing it that way. Okay, so our dough has been fermenting in the fridge overnight. We're gonna take it out, and our artisan loaf bread, I'm gonna throw that one in the oven first. I've got my oven preheated to 450, and I always add the Dutch oven around when it's at 400 degrees. That way the Dutch oven can get warm, but it's not too hot. In the past, I've done it where I put the Dutch oven in for the entire time that the oven is preheating, and then it gets too hot to where when you put the bread in, the crust of the bread on the bottom is just like rock hard and it is impossible to cut. So learn from my mistakes to just preheat the Dutch oven a little bit, not the entire time you're preheating the oven. And while our oven is preheating, we are gonna get a sheet of parchment paper out, flip our dough onto the parchment paper from our floured banneton, and then we're gonna cut a few slits into our bread. This is to help it expand and grow. So you can get really fancy with your cuts, or a lot of times I end up just cutting a slit down the middle and then a few on the sides, and I don't get super fancy. But if you want to make like pretty flowers, you totally can. And for our hamburger buns, we are going to lightly flour our countertop surface, just real light so it doesn't stick, not a ton of flour. And then we will separate these into 8 identical loaves. And as much as possible, try and have them be identical. Mine, as you will see, are not 100% identical. I did try to make them as close as possible by weighing them here. They were anywhere between 110 to 118 grams. So just try and get them as close as possible as you can. And then we'll tuck them in and roll them into a ball. And once we get all 8 of our hamburger buns rolled and put together, we're gonna put them on our greased parchment paper that is on our baking sheet, and that is what we will put in the oven. You can also bake these in a 9x13 pan. Just put the parchment paper in the glass 9x13. That works well too, but the sheet pan also works just fine. And then we are gonna add our artisan loaf bread to the oven. So when you do that, just take the lid off, put the loaf in there, and that's also why you want to use parchment paper, because this helps just make the process easier of getting the loaf in and out. It doesn't stick, and you're not gonna burn yourself. So throw in a few ice cubes around the edge, not to where it's touching the bread, but where it's on the outside of the parchment paper and the pan. And this creates steam in your Dutch oven while the lid is still on it. And while our artisan loaf bread rises, we are going to cover our hamburger buns and then also let them double in size before we bake those. So our bread is all done baking. We've got our nice golden hamburger buns. They are so beautiful. I did put some butter over the top, melted butter. The bottoms look really good. So these will be great this week for either sandwiches for lunch or if we decide to grill burgers. But they also smell amazing. I love the smell of fresh baked bread. They're still a little warm, so I'm gonna let them cool, but I am gonna cut into one here soon and just see how amazing the inside looks. And then we also have our artisan loaf bread that is done, and look at the bottom on that. So nice and golden. And then also the top is just so beautiful. And this one smells good. This was the garlic herb. I decided to do garlic herb instead of cheddar and jalapeno. And this is gonna be so good with sandwiches or soups or some toast. I just love this bread. My family honestly usually eats it within like a week because it is so delicious. So after you bake your artisan bread, even with regular bread, you want to let it set out and cool down a little bit. So since we baked our artisan bread first, this is already cooled for probably about an hour now. And so I am gonna go ahead and cut into this because I am excited to see what the inside looks like and then also eat a piece. It looks so nice and so soft. I even just love eating the crust. So delicious. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have learned a lot about how to make sourdough, at least how to make an artisan loaf and some hamburger buns. If you enjoyed this type of content in this video, make sure to check out my sourdough playlist. I have a bunch of other videos on using sourdough and making sourdough items. And then make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks, y'all. Bye.